Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Hey, welcome. This is Paranoid American Podcast, and we're just jumping right into it. No introductions. Some introductions necessary. This is my road dog, Chaney. One of my best friends, seriously, not just because we're both Florida peoples, but also because we are like two of, one mind. And there's one thing in particular that Chaney has been an expert on for such a long time, and it's interesting to me in theory, but I want to understand everything about the occultism behind the Vril Housewives franchise, the people involved. There's links to Isaac Cappy. There's links to the Obamas. There's all sorts of weird links in this one thing that has entranced so much of our modern society. I don't know what season we're on or anything. You know all that stuff. And I want to get from you today, like, what's the hot goss on the Vril Housewives? Why should anybody even care? Isn't it just for like vapidly turning your head off and not worrying about the cares of the world? Is it just pure escapism, or is there more to it?
I thought it was. I found the Vril Housewives. My sister's watched every one of them. She tells me about it as if they're one of her friends. She'll be like, the Vril Housewives of New York or the Vril Housewives of Orange County. And then eventually my wife started watching a show called Vanderpump Rules. Vanderpump Rules is Lisa Vanderpump. She was the HBIC of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She had a bunch of restaurants all over the world. And so she took one of her restaurants in LA County, like Hollywood, and turned it into a reality show. So all the people, all the hot young kids from that show, they became celebrities. One of them had a band. Tom Sandoval had a band with Isaac Cappy called Charles McMansion, and they had a couple of videos that came out that you can go on YouTube and see Isaac Cappy dancing with Tom Sandoval now. So I found them through Vanderpump Rules, and then Lisa, being a Real Housewife, my wife started watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So when I'm first watching, I'm like, okay, here's a lady, here's a bunch of housefrows, rich housefrows, and their nice cars and their shoes that cost more than your car. Great. So as I'm paying attention to it, the season that I'm watching, there's Kyle and Kim Richards. And I'm like, they look familiar to me. Why do they look so familiar? So I start looking up Kyle and Kim Richards. And I remember this show on Disney called Return to Witch Mountain. And I remember this like part of Disney where it got really spacey and witchy, like not just in the cartoons, but there was this real life movies that were coming out in like the 70s. And so Kim is an original Disney child star. And I was like, oh, Disney, me and you with the Disney whole occult of Disney. I was just like, she might as well be Britney Spears to me. I might as well be looking at Heather O'Rourke. Oh, and I mean, look how much she looks like Heather O'Rourke. It's insane. So, I start like looking at her and she seems very traumatized. A lot that goes on with her, and I don't really think two things of it. And then one day, one of her children, I believe it was, she was having a baby shower. And Lisa Rinna, who's a soap star, she's the beard of Harry Hamlin, I believe. I believe he's a gay man, and Lisa Rinna just pretends and marries him. And then she has two famous daughters. She gives Kim a bunny and Follow the White Rabbit. I'm like, this is crazy. So then I start seeing this bunny symbolism come up all the time in the show. In the same thing, Lisa's biggest, like same season, Lisa's biggest fight is against the Yulin Dog Festival in China. So I'm like, what's the Yulin Dog Festival? What's the Lychee Dog Fest in China? And then I start looking it up, and everything about it starts attaching to everything that we think about Vril Oxide. What? They have to take dogs from people's houses because the more coddled and loved the dog is, the more fear is expressed when the skin is ripped off of it before they eat it. And this becomes this huge delicacy. And everything that Lisa Vanderpump does is to stop this. This is like her big trope. So I'm like, it reminds me of Howard Stern's wife, Beth O, with cats, and something about their karmic. There's something about, I think they rescue animals and hurt children. It's like, I know that seems so, I'm not one of these people where it's like a karmic balance, but there is something to it. It's like they look like good guys in front of us to always rescue animals, but then they're doing really nefarious stuff behind the scenes.
Well, I've heard this come up in the same line of dialogue, that once you have some sort of a monopoly, or at least a rapport in the world of trafficking animals, right? So if you're saving animals, if you're saving them in mass, or if you're just associated with, oh, don't worry, this bus is full of dogs, or this train is full of dogs and cats and saved horses or whatever, then you can kind of start sneaking all types of livestock and live animals into this existing pipeline. So if you can keep one of those pipelines almost in such high regard that it gets to bypass, or at least some of the normal regulation is hand waved, because it's like, oh, they've got injured horses on that bus, let's not stop them, let's let them go ahead and go across the border, this checkpoint or whatever. That's a very simplistic reduction of what I think kind of happens, but
almost like art in the embassies.
Like delicacies of like restaurants and stuff, where you mentioned this too, where you can't open that cheese and inspect it, because the second you open it, we now have to use it within 4 hours, and we spend $30,000 for this cheese, or whatever the hell the ingredient is. It's about establishing pipelines in the mundane world and like the exoteric world that do the thing that they're supposed to be doing, and they check all the boxes. They're like they're beards, right? It's like a beard buzz.
And it makes them feel better that they're doing a good thing. So then Lisa has right on probably Hollywood Boulevard or somewhere in Beverly Hills, a dog rescue that everybody knows about. And then it's right out in the open that Lisa Vanderpump can probably have shipping containers come over from China, and no one's going to inspect it because she also runs restaurants everywhere. And don't open that cheese because you might make it go bad. But she was the first that really, with this whole attachment, that made me start paying attention to these women. And it gets so much deeper the more attention that I start to pay. Erica Jane Girardi comes on later in the seasons. And this is like my conspiracy mind at this point. We already know about WikiLeaks. We already know about, Pizzagate. We already heard of these things. So then I meet Erica Girardi, and she is married to Tom Girardi. Tom Girardi is famous for Aaron Brockovich. He was this attorney that he quote unquote helped people get, like Aaron was almost the beard of Tom Girardi, because it made it look like it was all good that he was helping these people get paid off from all these cancers and all this weird stuff. But really, he was embezzling and keeping all the money he was winning. But Tom Girardi is also the attorney for the Nexium cult. And so the Nexium cult, you start getting into what the bleep do we know and how that becomes a whole psyop, because the whole guy who made the Nexium cult famous is Mark Vincente, who's the same guy who is the creator of What the Bleep Do We Know, co-creator of that. And so they almost set up a new age Scientology that we hear about branding coming later on, and Stormy Daniels and Hunter Biden and Anthony Weiner. And it all attaches to this cult in upstate New York that I'm like, Erica Girardi. And she leaves this marriage, takes a little bit of the shame from this marriage, but doesn't take one thing from it. And it leads me to believe that whatever the things that Tom has are dirty. And Erica just walks away with she's almost the Tina Turner in the story, where she's like, as long as I can keep my name. So she just is Erica Jane. And now she gets paid off with her own Vegas show right now. So she's like an entertainer.
Now, would someone going to see her in Vegas, would anyone go there to see her unrelated to Housewives? Like if she's a singer or an actress, whatever, are they like, oh, I didn't even know she was in Housewives, or I don't care about the housewife aspect, or is that her one true claim to fame as being associated with the Housewives franchise?
I think she's 99% Housewives. If there is a 1%, it's like a ravey queer man drag area.
Slay queen. Yeah.
Yeah. But so she is set up as the gold digger. And now she's they're creating her character to be like the Tina Turner almost. But then there's this other woman. I don't have her attached to conspiracies right now. Her name's Sutton. And she seems to be associated with every major fashion house in the world. She's their darling. She is a Southern belle Sutton Strack. She's a Southern belle who ends up divorcing her husband, gets whatever the divorce settlement is. She is teaching these other women how to get a divorce because she is next level loaded now. And I can't understand it. Even her personality doesn't really fit it. But really, every big, huge fashion house in the world, and we always talk about the magic with these fashion houses, House of Gucci, Louis Vuitton, even Gianni Versace and every Donatello, every way that attaches to things. But it's weird.
So she marries into someone at the Pacific Investment Management Company, PIMCO. And that's where all this money comes from, it sounds like.
And for Q kids out there, following the wives is important. This is something that you have to learn how to do in your conspiracy brain on all your digs. It's not just who's sitting at the boardroom table, it's who they're married to and what boardroom they sit at. And so this is a big, huge thing I think about the Housewives is you can always keep the money with your children and bloodline if you can make sure the wives end up with the estate. And so, I think wombs, in less than 2 marriages, we can hide a womb and what kingdom it came from. And that's where I think the last name trope, it's of course they'll fall for it. Their ego, they get to put their last name on it. Really, it was hiding. It was wombs going and hiding, I think.
Expand on that a little bit, because I think that's an interesting concept, especially if you think about how royalty used to be given out, where you'd have to get the hand of the princess in order to inherit this large kingdom. And that's kind of been inverted now. Now you just got to have a rich dad. And now the rich dad can just bestow all that on you. But this is almost a nod to the way things were for such a much longer time. Ancient sort of kingdoms would be given to different, entirely different families. It was Game of Thrones, but it was really whoever got to marry this princess. And I think the closest version that we've got to modern day royalty and princesses and stuff would be these sort of housewife shows.
It you're not Jewish unless your mother's Jewish. So we can talk about what we assume people and the roles that they're playing, but the womb you came from is, it's almost like, to me, the Guinevere is the more important part. The sword, we keep thinking about the sword and not about the stone.
Yeah, the sheath.
And so it's like, even the monolith talk, we always talk about, like, Vatican City or Vatican, London City, Washington, DC, but nobody talks about the Vesica Pisces that's below it. And so I just think it's curious that the bloodline is really the womb that you're from. And it has nothing to do with what sword was stuck in the stone of that womb. And because there could have been many. And depending on what kingdom that you came from, some people believe the DNA of everything that's ever touches that womb stays in that womb for 7 years. So some of the medicine men and medicine women would have had the smartest man in the village and the fastest man in the village and the strongest man in the village all sleep with that womb in hopes that the DNA would create a perfect child for the village to raise.
What season is that on?
I know. I wish I knew the exact tribe of medicine man and medicine woman but it was definitely American tribe that I was reading about, where they would have them pick the best spouses, and the fathers would never know who the father was, and they would all take care of the kid as if it was theirs. And I was like,
I mean, also just the regular supply and demand dynamic here, right? Like, if you had 100 dudes, they can keep cranking out more people, right? More kids every day of the week for a full 9 months. But the second that the mother decides to use their womb and create the next iteration of whatever, she can create, like, shop's closed for 9 months, right? So there's actually something much more exclusive, being able to look at her as, like, the real vessel there, and not again, it's the stone and not the sword, maybe in this case.
Or I don't know. It goes back pretty much into every single religion, is that there seems to be daughters of man, but a daughter, just a human daughter, could not hold a Nephilim in her womb. So it makes me think, even a lot of the fallen, some of the things that we think about, it's like we always put this masculine on everything, that it's like, oh, look at, it's Nimrod. I don't know. What about Isis? Like, to me, Isis's womb, if they were both giants, would have been more important than Nimrod's staff.
So based on what we know about the current Housewives, which is obviously, it's like a reality TV show production, and it's messy, right? Do you think that throughout all of time and history, it's always been messy? Or do you think that this is dialing it up for TV and for entertainment reasons?
I think this is how it actually goes. I think we are watching royalty in a weird way. They try to retell us, like, oh, when Queen Elizabeth first met, some starlet from Hollywood, she felt insecure about this thing. And they try to retell us what goes on in these. When Marilyn Monroe first met this, and it's like, somewhere there is an energy exchange where Britney Spears has an equal amount of energy as Prince William. And so we treat one like a prince. Does he have any kind of control that she doesn't? Or is he under conservatorship too? And so it's just, I don't know. I feel like we're watching the Game of Thrones play out. And then the things we think are so cheesy, the things we think are so corny, where everybody's like, I don't even watch TV, I'm better than that. Well, you can pick your form of brainwashing. Whatever it is, you might think it's a podcast, or you might think it's a book, or you might think it's the town square crier, but we're all essentially being brainwashed all the time. You just decide if you want to put the goggles on and try to decipher it. Like, people talk, I don't watch the Super Bowl, I just watch so I can look at the Moloch ritual because I want to dissect Dionysus. Okay, cool. That's what I do when I watch everything. So I feel like things like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, it always gets like a corny rap, and there's really no different in what they're playing out on the show as WWE or as NFL football. It's like you're still seeing symbology take the exact same place Even if it's we were talking about the Dolly ritual when it came up. They this season it started out that they had a Salvador Dali party, and I was like, "Shut the front door! This is the surrealistic party and everything about it, including the Saturn hats and the." I was like, "Thomas, look at I felt like they're mocking sometimes. It's like only what I'm 0.0001% of the people who look at the Real Housewives the way I do, and they're going to have a Rothschild like surrealistic Dolly party and all dress in the same antlers. And I'm like, oh, this is just what rich people do. They're all paying homage to these kind of things over and over again. And I
Yeah, I
just think
want
we
like
don't know it.
do you think that this is the housewives themselves, one of them or all of them collectively said, "Hey, there's that surreal dinner ball that was thrown at the Rothschild mansion, Salvador Dali and the Eyes Wide Shut was based on," and or do you think that there's some sort of, royal like a cult party planner that just happens to be the thread in all of these different, like social groups? Do you think one of the housewives in particular was like, we have to do this exact thing?
I think this because back to Kyle and Kim Richards, the Disney kids. They're the sisters. Kim is no longer on the show. Kyle is. Her other sister has kind of replaced Kim a little bit on the show. And this is little Kathy Hilton. And so little Kathy Hilton has two daughters. You might know them, Paris and Nikki. Nikki is married to a Rothschild. So this they say there's like this rumor, like page 6 rumor Hollywood stuff, that there was a spell done by a witch on Big Kathy. Big Kathy did all these rituals to make sure that her daughters would end up with all this kind of mystique and power. And so within two generations, her granddaughter is now married to a Rothschild. And that's little Kathy Hilton. Big Kathy was her mother. But Kathy herself married a Hilton, and which is wild. So they're like, it's everybody thinks hotels always with the Hiltons, but the amount of real estate that they own, they're one of the biggest real estate companies in the world. And I believe that the elite have to give their properties off to other elite because me and Thomas aren't allowed to have a house with tunnels. We're not allowed to have a house that just walks up into the Playboy mansion. Like it has to be, they have to be handed off to specific people. So even the Hilton can't become too much of a monopoly. So Kyle, the youngest sister, she marries Mauricio, who owns a whole separate real estate agency called The Agency. And it looks like it's competing, but I don't believe they're competing at all. I just think them looking like they're competing, they can take a little more money if me and you are selling or buying just as normal people. I think it's like a whole facade. And then they use the show, The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, to show off the properties that real humans can buy. So that way it looks like it's all authentic and on the up and up because we would never know about buying the Vanderbilt pool.
So who is the show actually for? Do you think it's for us peons and for people that are just watching E, or is there like a Mockingbird aspect to this where it's like I guess that's kind of what you're hinting towards, is that there's the exoteric version. You're like, oh, look at these people and the restaurants they go to and the houses that they live in, that's attainable by me. But also, if we're talking about bringing back these surreal dinner balls and it's like a nod to some Rothschild party, like it almost feels like that's not really meant for you or me. That's meant for somebody else watching, maybe a smaller demographic of some kind.
Yeah, it's like we just think, oh, how glamorous. They have red bottoms on their shoes. Oh, how glamorous. Look at, they have swans. Like I don't think we understand the esoteric symbolism behind any of it. And even all of their kids are all the supermodels we follow now. So another Real Housewife was Yolanda. and her name was Hadid, Yolanda Hadid. She was one of the biggest supermodels in the world before me and Thomas were born, because we're so young. No, probably in like the 80s or 90s.
I was
Yolanda
not
like,
expecting a white lady with blonde hair when you said Yolanda Hadid, just for the record.
And I know, and not Hadith, Hadid. But her two daughters are Gigi and Bella Hadid, which are literally, if you were to pick the top 10 biggest supermodels right now, it's these two girls, and we watched them all grow up on The Real Housewives. So it's almost like an implanting of beauty a little bit in our heads, that these certain men, they have the powerful men marry these beautiful, Artemis goddesses, and then they have these god kings. So that it's like there's something about what's really happening where we just look at it, oh, well, money and beauty, that's how it goes. But
it says right here, Bella Hadid was named one of the 100 most influential people in the world just a year and a half ago.
That's pretty wild. And so whatever the spell, somewhere in my theory, the Real Housewives are witches, and when they coven, they're passing down in this way to their bloodline stuff we don't understand. Like, it's bigger than a nepotism. There's something more going on than just CIA begot CIA. And so somewhere I would theorize that the Real Housewives are doing occult magic. And
it says here too for Yolanda Hadid that her father died when she was 7 in an accident, which is just another one of those interesting aspects of these new forms of royalty that have all this weird capital that translates into financial and political capital, but they tend to be raised into sacrifice.
See how she's the mother of IMG models? Click IMG. International Management Group. It would make me curious what other things we could attach to this as far as Epstein Island, Rachel Chandler. I would even argue that, what's that? Lori Loughlin's daughter, when she got all caught up in that college scandal, the reality of that college scandal wasn't because we didn't all realize rich and famous people's kids were going to school quicker than us. That was not it. It was because they were all on boats like a week or 2 weeks before, and they got paid like $250,000 for a week of their time to hang out with some sheiks. So I just think there's levels to the human trafficking game that we don't understand. There's levels to a Hollywood madam and a DC madam. They don't want to sleep with just Joe Schmo on the corner. They want Channing Tatum, whatever that motherfucker's name is that I always want to say, Tatum O'Neal. But
and we're talking specifically about the Housewives of Beverly Hills, right? But there's like a million different spin-offs on this now.
Yes.
There's Housewives and are all of those around the same level in terms of the influence that some of them have and like the occult rituals that you think that it might be associated with? Or is the Beverly Hills one, is that like the Mother Lodge?
I almost feel like fame isn't necessarily power unless you are that witch. Everybody always says, people always think they want fame and money, give them the money and see if they still want the fame. I feel like a witch wants the fame. The fame's more powerful than the money because they can turn the population on a dime.
Question. Like, I always think the smartest lottery winners are the ones that immediately go and hire a lawyer and have the lawyer go and pick up the check and do all of the things and be a proxy so that no one actually knows who the lottery winner is. Like that level of anti-fame, because they have got the money without the fame. You don't want it at the same time, at least.
But then you think of like right now in the zeitgeist that we're in of like the Elon Trump, they could just put out a tweet and all of a sudden have the 10th biggest crypto in the world in 24 hours.
Is there not a Vanderpump coin? That would be the easiest thing to sell, right? We're pumping Vanderpump.
There isn't. I don't know. Not that I know of. There isn't a running Real Housewives.
Or just a Vander coin. If you had a Vander coin, you could pump that.
I actually tried to get my wife when we got married because she's like, "Oh, I'm going to take your last name." And I was like, I mean, if we're going to change names, we should get a cool last name like Vanderpump.
just like inherit one, Goldberg, right?
Yeah, well,
Jane
both
Goldberg.
just, yeah, that would have been the smart thing to do. Like, we should just both become Steins. They'll look at both of us and be like, hmm. They'll always
Hadid,
wonder
my
what
last
one.
name's Hadid. What do you want from me?
Yeah. But the other Bella Hadid thing, she had a big, huge Lyme story that came out with her. And it was almost, I would akin it to the same way as making Jenny McCarthy, taking the dumb blonde and using her to make everybody that said autism and vaccines were associated look like a silly person because they used the dumb blonde. I felt like they used Yolanda, the mom, to make anyone that said Lyme look silly. And so she said, I not only have Lyme, all three of my kids have Lyme. And so then I would theorize about other injuries that we're not allowed to talk about that are also being buried by that Lyme. I put Lyme with lupus or AIDS or any of that shit where your autoimmune disorder, where your immune system starts to attack itself, to me is always a jibby jab injury. And so I just think those kind of things that come out sometimes in the mainstream are meant to placate a whole bunch of other adults that have these ailments and things. And so that big pharma can figure out, we're going to help you with that. And here's a whole bunch of stuff that costs money for us to help you, instead of admitting they caused the thing to begin with. It's like getting in front of all of that when this stuff comes out in the media, in my opinion.
And a lot of these I mean, I guess I don't know the exact number, but a lot of the husbands in these housewives shows tend to be what, like, bankers, investors, lawyers, and doctors, right? So
Producers, doctors, like they are all the most powerful men in the world. They're so powerful, they had to give their wife a hobby like this. They're like, please go entertain yourself and maybe you can make a little money too. And then the husbands usually sit in the back end and are selling something else that we don't know. Like, why don't you and your wives all go hang out in this house and film the show there this weekend and have a party? And then that house, if you look it up, is for sale. All the furniture inside's for sale. Like everything in it is something being sold somewhere. All the clothes they're wearing is something being sold all the time. And even the designers, the diamonds, the stuff they can buy, the stores that are open for them. It's pretty crazy stuff. And they're all over the world. They have
and
Real
we're not
Housewives
talking
of
like
Dubai.
sponsored. So we're talking like outside of the show. Let's say, you know, the couch that they were sitting on in that episode. What happens? Is someone buying a bunch of those couch models? Are they buying that exact couch that they themselves sat on? Like what's the actual
It's so much so
here?
that there is actually games on your phone, apps that are like house design or like interior design app, like some game. And every single one of the pieces of furniture inside that game, you can not only buy, they're also in the Real Housewives. But no one makes the connection that these are the same things. You're just being shown it over and over again. So you're like, I need that coffee table in my house. You know how we go in somebody's house and we're like, oh, this is a new, fresh design. And then over the next few years, you're like, huh, the entire world became shabby chic with the same color palette. Or, oh, everything became minimalistic and square and stone. Like it's a Beetlejuice art collection. It's like everything just does these waves, but there's no originality. It's like live, laugh, love written in a different cursive. But these shows sell that, which help create this, like, this is what happy looks like.
Well,
And
that makes me think too, because when you mention how those like the minimalistic style, also like the brutalism that was largely influenced by the intelligence agencies that were also behind, let's promote abstract modern art, let's promote like these brutalist sort of architecture in order to maybe make people think in more binary ways or more like just more simple-minded in ways. Do you think that there is an intelligence aspect, like an actual CIA, NSA sort of aspect to the housewife shows? Are they like planting the way that they want other people to act through like emulation in these shows?
I think it's so next level that they're one of like a Real Housewife would be Teddy Mellencamp. And you're like, who's Teddy Mellencamp? Oh,
Who is Teddy Mellencamp?
John Cougar Mellencamp's daughter. And so she is a pointless Real Housewife, but I would wonder if during the time, and she didn't sign up for a lot of seasons of Real Housewife, she's not on for a very long time, but I wonder how her dad's album sales do during this time. And then what kind of music is he pushing? Oh, Jack and Diane, it's very Americana. Ba, 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 ba. We're setting up this polarization in America during her season of Real Housewives. So you need this Americana side. You need the faux John Cougar Mellencamp and Bruce Springsteen, which is, they're both two little twinky Jewish kids that are like playing rough and stuff Americana guys. And, but you do need this narrative to come in the preset that ends up being America 2016.
Is this her dressed up as Pepe? That's crazy.
Huh. I think some of the Real Housewives, I question their like, I question what, like, are they Secret Society of Good Guys?
Yeah, I mean, here's a photo of Teddy Mellencamp dressed up as Pepe the Frog. Or a frog. But it's at least a frog.
A random frog. Another interesting Real Housewife is Dorit. And Dorit, if these elite fashion houses all are kind of spells and you're wearing certain leathers and certain materials and conductive things on yourself, Dorit always head to toe is in these kind of fashions, like where it is labeled up. You can tell she is in Dolce & Gabbana. Now, I think she's just like a pretty kind of dummy, honestly. I think her husband, he was the manager for Boy George, and he was a big record exec. And I think he just uses her to embezzle money. I think she will, as long as he's involved, she'll be left with nothing. I think he even used the show and didn't realize that his wife would actually almost get harmed and have such an issue with it. But I think PK set up a fake robbery on his house, and Dorit ended up getting, a gun held to her head. But I think it was all entirely fake, just for money.
Interesting. And it also says Paul Kemsley, her husband, is close with Lord Sugar of the Apprentice UK edition.
Super curious. And the football league, all this stuff, you're going to start, this is ahead of time. This has nothing to do with nothing, but soccer and soccer conspiracies mixed with the Olympics and Olympic conspiracies are all coming to Los Angeles. Like, this is a whole big thing. If you ever want to look at tons of money going into a place, a stick figure stadium getting built for nothing, and then all the money and everything leaving, and the people just being left with this enormous stick figure stadium over and over again from soccer. So it's like,
yeah, and the Olympics. So what the soccer is doing the same kind of parade that we see the Olympics do, where exactly that happens. All this money floods into an area, a bunch of contractors scoop up all that money, they build the Olympic Stadium, they get all the vendor stuff, they get everything together, and then as soon as the Olympics are over, they just kind of abandon it, and any weird infrastructure problems that they created in the process, that's left to just be dealt with by the people of that particular city. You kind of see this happen with all sorts of corporations inheriting and adopting stadiums in certain areas. So, and I don't know, I mean, here in Orlando, soccer is like still getting pushed on us. We're supposed to be one of the big like soccer hubs of the United States. I don't know if it's fully catching on, but you can definitely see this this sort of trajectory happening, and it always does look like a miniature version of the Olympics, like what they try and do once the Olympics come to town.
I also in Olympus, Mount Olympus. And so there all these goddesses that it's not all just Zeus. There's so many goddesses in Olympus. And so the idea that we're burning Hollywood and putting up Olympus where it once was is essentially what's happening in their thing. And so I even would say in the Me Too movement spell that happened beforehand, the way they wanted, like it was supposed to be, they never thought she'd lose Hillary. We were going to get Kamala and she was just going to walk in. I mean, the DNC didn't even get to pick at all. We were really going to get this whole reign of like dark magic, like woman, like this faux hierarchy of like the matriarchy's back, but it wasn't right. It's like something weird was happening, and I think
we saw Hillary coughed up a big hunk of phlegm into the pot, and it kind of screwed it up for everybody.
Well, I think the Kardashians are a huge part of this power structure that isn't talked about enough. Like Kris Jenner, she literally sacrifices the American hero and turns him into a woman. And that gives power to all her daughters to become, you can say what you will about Kim. She's more powerful, more rich, more everything than Beyonce. And it's like every man they marry, they almost succubus their energy away and we never hear from them again eventually.
Shout out Kanye.
Yeah. And then it's like, now we know Kanye was even like part of that whole thing where they're like, Kanye's crazy. He's calling P. Diddy a Fed and he's yelling at Kim to keep my fucking daughter away from Kanye or keep my daughter away from Diddy. Now it all makes sense. You know, it's like these certain things that were happening with the Kardashians, and Kris Jenner is best friends with the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But she has her own show. So she just goes to dinner parties occasionally. But her true bestie makes a lot more appearances than her. And that's Faye Resnick. And Faye Resnick, you might remember because she was besties with one Nicole Brown Simpson. And so in the rituals that were played out on America, I would argue that the O.J. Simpson trial was equivalent to 9/11 with the PSYOP and how long it played out on top of us, or at least that it seemed that way in my childhood.
Right.
It was just every night.
Where the Kardashians ultimately got their initial power was the O.J. Simpson trial.
The O.J. Simpson trial, people theorize that Khloe Kardashian is O.J. Simpson's real daughter because Beverly Hills just has these Dionysus parties and everybody just hooks up all the time. And Kris Jenner just, kept the kid. Robert raises Khloe like it's his own, and they move on with this Kardashian brand name. But keeping up with the Kardashians only started is because Robert, people say, got the bag, but if you are somebody's attorney, you can't be called to on the stand. And so he never was really OJ's attorney. He was just his best friend, and then got attorney-client privileges once he stated that I'll just be his attorney on this case too. But really, it had nothing to do with nothing, and we get the E! Entertainment crossover that becomes the Kardashian network. And KKKKK, and the spell, some people say that Big Kathy, the same spell that she had with would be the same spell that Kris Jenner had for her kids. So KKKKKKK.
Right. And Khloe Kardashian, Kim Kardashian, Kris, even the Kanye, like all of the cuz.
Except Caitlyn, purposefully C, which could have been a K. It's like a weird fuck you. Like never really, no matter even if you cut your dick off, you're still never going to be a K. You're still a C. But Kris is friends with all of them. And Big Kathy begot Little Kathy, Paris and Nikki's mom. she was best friends with Michael Jackson. And so they came up together and made a promise to each other that they would both name their firstborn Paris. And so you have Paris Jackson and Paris Hilton.
Are they the same age?
No,
Roughly?
Paris is older.
Paris Hilton is older.
Paris Hilton is older, yeah. But if you, Michael Jackson is a whole different conspiracy all its own. But I just think it's an interesting tie-in that you're like, if there is a secret society of good guys, I would always put Michael Jackson in that category. So if my contrarian brain also messes around with Kathy leaving the Hilton family, and then all of a sudden, what does Paris do? She outs all the Parvo schools.
Is there a chance that Paris Hilton is a good guy?
Well, we have so many pictures of her with Rachel Chandler. And we know she's one of the people that in the Britney Spears conspiracy, you have to put those people at the wedding all in this different category of what the fuck. Madonna, Donatella Versace. We just had Homegirl crying. Rodriguez, I think. Whatever. I don't know what
Selena?
her name is. I know Selena Gomez. I think she was there too. And Paris Hilton. So everything with one of the ways we keep proving that Paris is, or that Britney is even alive, is because Paris goes on talk shows and says she is. So, and then, yeah.
I'm really interested too in the Isaac Cappy connection.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of brought it up when we were just talking about he was in like a band with somebody. Like, where does Isaac Cappy fit into all this? For example, was the person that he knew and he was in a band with, was that popular at the time when he ended up getting taken out or taking himself out? Like, was this at the height of Isaac Cappy QAnon fever, or did this happen outside of that?
It's before QAnon. It's like Isaac's a kind of celebrity at this time.
Because I only know of Isaac Cappy from
it's so
his
weird
QAnon
kind of
stuff.
How the Isaac Cappy breakdown in general kind of got mixed with the QAnon movement, but it's the way we ended up getting all this attention. The Anon movement ended up getting all this attention from Isaac Cappy, but then he's like the first celebrity that starts naming names. He starts naming big names, Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, doing all like Seth Green, starts naming real names and then telling us things that like, you need to look up Sarah Ashcroft. You need to look up the, name. And he's like attaching weird things, saying certain specific people like Seth Green has like a dungeon in his house, and starts making these other connections. But all of this stuff, if you were to watch Vanderpump with Isaac on it, it's like maybe Isaac at the time he had his like role in that one scary movie, whatever that one movie is, he was like
I'll look it up while we're talking here, because
he was like a supporting role.
He was in anything.
Oh, it was like a supporting role. He's been in a couple of movies actually, but there was one of the movies that was like a lot of people really liked it was like a weird. Let's see.
He was in Thor as a pet store clerk.
Yeah,
he was in the movie Fanboys, which was about Garfunkel. Terminator Salvation.
None of these.
Let's see what else we got here. Breaking Bad, he was a prisoner in the background. He was a stoner dude and Not Forgotten. We got a bunch of shorts. Clown Camp Massacre, Beer Fest.
Scroll up though. Let me see. Let's see.
We got Streetcar, Incredible Voyage of Captain Hook. He played Peter Pan, although that was just a short. Lemonade Mouth, 10 years. Night Shift.
No, that's a television series.
Rachel Drak's Late Night Snack.
Yeah, I don't remember. But yeah, I guess he's been in a whole bunch of things. I didn't know all of those. Yeah, but he was
the things that he's claiming is this. Where do you think Isaac Cappy got this knowledge from? Did he just hear from a person that he knew or do you think that he actually saw some of this stuff?
I think Isaac went too far. I think Isaac Cappy actually went too far. And I think some of his confessions toward the end of his life, he did stuff that makes him sick. Like whatever even if he didn't do whatever we think is the grossest, he did stuff that makes him feel uncomfortable or made him uncomfortable before Tom Hanks threw him off the overpass, allegedly.
Yeah, it says, as a musician, Cappy played in the band Charles McMansion with Tom Sandoval.
Sandoval, yeah.
Sandoval, and they released one recording, the song TIP, which stands for Touch in Public, and then appeared on Vanderpump Rules. And then it also says that Cappy appeared as a guest on Alex Jones's InfoWars in 2018, and this is where he made these accusations of Tom Hanks and Seth Green and a whole bunch of other things that sounds like what you would expect to hear on any Alex Jones show, essentially.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of crazy because Alex really never got involved with Q. And he wasn't the arbiter of truth for Sandy Hook either. It's weird how the mainstream media made Alex Jones attached to either of these things, almost like they could just, because they wanted to do that fake trial with a fake family, with fake children, and try to convince us, like, look, if you guys keep talking, you guys are going to lose your online too. And then it didn't work because every time they cut off one of our channels, 3 grew back in its spot. And now Alex Jones had to come out as skinny Alex Jones and see if everyone buys the InfoWar. I don't know. I give him a lot of credit for some things, but I also think he is an intentional fork in the road.
And it had a note here that Isaac Cappy left a note before he ended up falling off of that overpass, where he claimed to be the reincarnation of Judas Iscariot. And also he apologized to Jesus Christ, Donald Trump, and to QAnon. And the post caption, beware the man that has nothing to lose, for he has nothing to protect. So yeah, I guess he was making some large claims, dropping some huge names, was saying some very specific things about people, and then was no more.
Yep. Judas. How interesting. And I always found that most interesting thing of all of it was a girl. I don't remember her name now or anything. There's so much that was, it's like we got all, like the internet, all the filters were taken off in 2018 for like 6 months. And so there was so much stuff I didn't realize I was going to have to save, or don't even know what terabyte it's on. But there was one girl that she was driving through the desert with Isaac Cappy. And she started hearing in her head Phil Collins, I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Hold on. And she was like, it was clear as day inside my brain. And I looked at Isaac and I said, is this what you've been dealing with? He's like, all the time. It's like they were shooting the voice of God, the technology, the voice of God. For people, Christians out there, don't get upset. The technology, it's called the voice of God technology. And it actually beamed this song. And he was like dealing with threats and voices and things playing in his head and scripts and movies and so, all the time.
Yeah,
and
this is T.I., a targeted individual. And another variation or name of voice of God is the V2K, or voice to skull. And this used to sound like crazy sci-fi. This has been around since the early 2000s at the very least. I've heard about. I think the V2K might have even been mentioned in Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, or one of these older William Cooper books. But it used to sound like something straight out of sci-fi, but now it's consumer grade. Now they've got, one of the best examples of this is they've got like a sound bar that emulates like 11.1 surround sound or anything. And you're like, how the hell could this one sound bar that just goes under my TV emulate any sort of surround? And that's because it has this like concentrated beam that it shoots it at a wall, and you can't hear it as it's being shot at the wall. But once it hits the wall and it disperses, then it creates that sound, and it kind of simulates having speakers behind you. And this is that exact same technology at a slightly different scale, where you can beam a sound almost with like laser-like precision, so that nothing can hear it until it hits the thing that turns into a speaker. And if they point it at your head, well, your head becomes that speaker. You become like a big subwoofer, essentially, where you can hear it. And I've heard it's even possible that if you were in a car with someone sitting close enough to them and they get hit with one of these, then you're going to hear it as well, because again, they kind of turn into a speaker, so you can hear like the reverb coming off of them, which is I guess is ironic that she didn't hear Phil Collins, because Phil Collins, especially his 80s era, was known for lots of reverb.
Well, you saying that reminds me of those glasses that are out now, like the Ray-Bans, where you can put them on and hear your conversation. And if you talk to anyone that has them, they're like, it's so weird. It's like there's a little speaker, but it's coming from inside. It's like vibrating in my bones. Like I can hear it in my bones, and like something else inside my ear. And it's like the way that it attaches to your head is creating, it's like your brain's hearing the sound. I don't even.
That's actually another thing that sounded crazy sci-fi, and now you can go on Amazon and do like workout headphones. They have some that are called bone conduction headphones, and these ones, they look like glasses some of the time, and it just clamps close enough to like around where your jawbone's at or the back of your skull, and it does exactly what you're talking about. It'll vibrate this bone that's close enough to your ear that it stimulates having sound. It's not making any sound at all. It's literally just vibrating the inside of your head so that you can hear it coming out. They also used to give that to deep sea divers, that they would have like a little speaker. I mean, I'm assuming like CIA style deep sea divers, that they would have these little bone conduction devices in their jaw that sometimes they would attach it to the molar. So now even if you're underwater and they needed to convey some message to you, they could just vibrate your back molar, and then it turns your head into the speaker so that you could hear things with clarity, which is something you normally really wouldn't be able to do underwater.
Or we talk about it all the time on SSGG, Lucille Ball getting the message from the Russian submarine in her teeth.
See, I mean, that's, even though that one gets brought up as like a silly thing that she made up or a cover story for something else, that the technology that would have made that possible 100% is realistic. Regardless of whether or not Lucille Ball went through those exact motions, that was something that could happen. If you had fillings, you could theoretically pick something up and have it vibrate enough for that you to hear, especially if you were extra sensitive to it.
Yeah, it happened to more than just her. There were some people that they thought they were legitimately crazy because they were hearing things, but it was really their feelings. It makes me wonder sometimes, like they tried to get rid of, our lead paint and it was bullshit. And they tried to get rid of all this stuff. It makes me wonder the people that have mercury fillings are probably the reason they're woke. Like you woke up from this Dick Gregory dream because you have mercury in your mouth.
And there are, I mean, I'm looking at some right now, but yeah, these consumer grade bone conduction headphones, they actually don't go over your ear. They go behind your ear and they clamp down right behind it. And they're as cheap as like $15. Like this is literally consumer grade at this point. This used to be really, really high technology, and now they've got, endless options. You could probably get like Barbie version of like how like Vanderpump Rules branded bone conduction headphones. That's not even a thing. Coming
out on paranoidamerican.com soon.
Right.
That's really all the weird stuff that we come up with. I wanted one person I wanted you to just look up, because when I was doing my research, her name comes up all the time. I remember her husband being one of the nasty, Adrienne Maloof. Oh, look at her. Click her. What is her life? I feel like she owns Vegas hotels or something.
Palm Casino Resort in Las Vegas.
Like her connections and her husband, who knows what kind of money? Like what? You own a hotel? You own a professional hockey team? Who are you?
Third child and only daughter of billionaire entrepreneur George J. Maloof Sr., who is a Lebanese descent.
So curious. Father suffered a heart attack in 1944. Maloof.
Look at how this. You ever seen the meme where it's like, how to draw an owl? First, draw 2 circles. Step 2, draw the fucking owl, and it's just like already done. Yeah. It's kind of like this, right? This is the father, George Maloof Sr., and it just says, taking over after his father suffered a heart attack in 44. Maloof expanded the the family business into hotels, trucking, and banking. He then later became the owner of the Houston Rockets. Like, just these two dots that you just go, oh, of course. Once you get into hotels, trucking, and banking, then you just own professional sports teams. That's just a normal trajectory.
And that's why I think every sports is all rigged. It's all money laundering between things. It's all like Vegas is almost the business center for these owners of sports teams to embezzle their money between each other and gambles. But even every single one of the sports is some kind of alchemy spell, and even the names of these sports, like who's fighting, who's going into the Super Bowl, are we about to have oil wars? Like, I don't know, it's really interesting to me. Even on the super small scale, Robert Kraft getting away with being involved in a human trafficking ring. And I think something suspicious about Aaron Hernandez's death and him writing everything on the walls like Illuminati and 3-eye symbolism and all that shit too. So it's just creepy, any of these professional sports teams. And who gets to run Vegas? Spouse. Press Paul Naif, her spouse. And
Paul Nassif.
Yeah.
An American otologist. I don't even know what this
Wait till you see
is.
he is the best known for co-hosting ETV reality series Botched. So it's where people are so effed up from plastic surgery that they have to come in and get them to fix it. But when you look at his face, he's botched. But yeah, that's interesting.
Well, again, you've got the okay. I'm awake.
Yeah.
So again, it's this constant role of bankers, lawyers, doctors, and entertainers. That seems to be the new version of royalty that we've got.
Well, in a weird way, Paul gives me the Bruce Willis character vibes of Death Becomes Her. Like, if these women are just changing skin like vampires, outliving a certain time until they become the elite heiresses of the next generation and the next generation and the next generation, they need to keep a plastic surgeon on hand. So if they break their bodies, look at Camille Grammer. That is Kelsey Grammer's ex-wife. Some of these people I have totally forgot about in my write-ups that I'm like, oh, Camille Grammer. But she kind of came on like she was going to be elite, and she thought she was the HBIC of Real Housewives, and no one really gave a shit about Kelsey. Then Kelsey got a divorce and got a younger wife, and look at, she started out as a dancer on Club MTV, the CIA's favorite network.
Yeah, she started at MTV. She worked with MC Search at some point, and then went directly to Playboy, and then started appearing in R-rated erotic films such as Marilyn Chambers' Bedtime Stories, New York Nights, and The Naked Detective. And this was, I guess, right at the beginning of when she attracts the attention of Kelsey Grammer. So was he watching The Naked Detective? And it was like,
or maybe Howard Stern. Look at, she was in Private Parts with Howard. And so he is this big, huge part of the entire old Hollywood that's dying. He had so much power and no one gives him credit for it. As much as the faux conservative movement Rush Limbaugh's power, Howard Stern, he was supposed to be the alternative version of that. Taylor Armstrong, I think the entire show, I think her husband beat her up, and I think the Real Housewives killed him. And then I think this is allegedly, this is just me.
Housewives came together and they killed him.
And I think that Zoe Kravitz ends up starring with Reese Witherspoon in the show Big Little Lies, and I think that is entirely about the Real Housewives killing this woman's husband.
I mean, that's a squad. For sure. So like what they're bickering at dinner over something really vapid, but then they're still down to get together and take out one of the husbands if someone like comes across their coven. Is that the dynamic here?
Well, it's funny that you said bickering at dinner. Taylor is most famous for the meme of the woman yelling at the white cat. You know that meme that
this
everyone
lady here, Taylor Armstrong from
is
Housewives.
the woman that's like,
She's the one yelling at the cat.
yeah.
Oh, what's the context of that cat meme? Or is the cat really there?
No, it's like how mad she was at this dinner table, and then it just became like a thing later on. But that all started with Taylor. So there's something with the meme magic of it all. And then Zoe Kravitz ends up doing the movie that we just talked about recently with Channing Tatum, whatever whatever the big Magic Mike's name is. Where they're on P. Diddy Island and drinking the flower juice.
Blink twice.
Blink twice, yeah. It's so fucking funny. See, Kyle Richards is the one holding her back. Kyle Richards is the youngest daughter of Kim and Kathy.
What was she yelling about?
I don't remember now, but it's so amazing. Yeah, look up her husband's death and see what it says. I even feel like he died in a weird way. Like he fell downstairs.
The husband was who? What was her husband's name?
Taylor Armstrong. Oh, you're on women yelling at cat. That's how she comes up if you put in Taylor Armstrong.
Yeah, you just search women yelling at cat and that's who comes up. So Russell Armstrong sounds like who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Russell and Armstrong, attorney, venture capitalist, checks both of those big boxes. Born in Dallas, right around after the JFK assassination, just by coincidentally. Criminal history, felony tax evasion, arrested in West Hollywood, AA member, attended 50 AA meetings. Death. He was found dead on Mulholland Drive. Shout out David Lynch. August 15, 2011, at the age of 47. Of course, it had to be 47, right? Death by hanging.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting too. Less than 24 hours after Armstrong's death, his friend and business partner, Alan Schramm, was also found dead, self-inflicted, on Mulholland Drive. So you've got two people take themselves out on Mulholland Drive within a 24-hour period.
And you have both of them by suicide very quickly by a dirty we all know the Los Angeles County Police Department's one of the dirtiest in the world. And so it's like closed and closed. So I just think, in my opinion, everything about that movie is those women didn't play, but he was really angry and he beat the shit out of her. And I think you got to be careful when you beat a witch. Her coven might come at you.
From Huffington Post, which was released when this happened, and it said, death by suicide was not the only thing the men had in common. Both Armstrong and Schramm neglected to leave suicide notes. They were both also reportedly members of a high net worth investors club called Tiger 21.
Well, Tiger 21 is a new rabbit hole for Thomas and I. And something else we'll have to add to Tiger 21. Heard
Tiger
Betty
21
White.
Is let's see in their own words. Who is Tiger 21? A premier peer advisory organization for high net worth entrepreneurs, investors, and executives. Our network of wealth creators and preservers help each other navigate the challenges and opportunities that suicide creates. Success creates. The Tiger 21 experience centers on learning about, reflecting issues pertaining to investing, life, and family. It just sounds like a generic call. This probably could have been the Nexium website if you just do like a search replace for Tiger 21 and Nexium.
You know how there was like women's group that they were the ones who branded themselves with Allison Mack and whatever the dude's name was.
Keith
Rainier's initials. Tiger 21 was the men's group. We start clicking on their names and it's like deceased.
Honestly, yeah. If anyone is playing like Death Bingo, maybe check out tiger21.com. And
Lisa Holiday looks like she's created from AI. Look at like that face is exactly the same on both sides. That is a fake. That is a mirror put in between a face. It is that person is not real.com.
She's responsible for optimizing member experience.
Oh, you can tell. Look at her. She looks like she has that mouth. She almost has orca mouth, and girls with orca mouth, S good D, I hear. You know how orca, that girl sucked her thumb too much. You can tell her front teeth are a little out there, and that might be good. If she was a natural, that girl, she was sucking her thumb.
What else? Yeah, the rest of the housewives we've gone through almost all.
I've saved some good ones till the end.
And,
I saved some good ones till the end for you.
Okay.
We don't have to go through, but one of my favorite housewives was Denise Richards, and everybody might remember Denise Richards from one little known movie called Wild Things, where she kissed a girl on the mouth, or that maybe that's just me and my young lesbian that I was like, oh my God, two girls kissing. But she ends up marrying Charlie Sheen. And
Tiger 21 blood.
Tiger 21. She ends up getting a divorce from Charlie Sheen, and she becomes a Real Housewife. Her episodes I find the most curious. With her boyfriend, who at one time he said, he starts saying all this like naturopathic stuff at a party. And they kind of just treat Denise and her man like they're the white trash of Beverly Hills. Like the other ladies are like, get out of here. You're not part of this coven.
Oh, that new money. Gross.
Yeah. Like Charlie Sheen's wife. And at one point, he says to Denise, the boyfriend or husband at the time, he's like, it's easy for you to say you're protected. And Charlie Sheen, we know of him what we know now, but there's scapegoat things that do happen, that what we know of somebody is not necessarily the way they're treated in the back end. And Charlie Sheen is from Hollywood royalty. The Sheens in general, the Estevezes, they run deep. They even marry Abduls. I mean, maybe Paula, not Sheiks, but that matters. So I think that Martin Sheen actually played a president on TV.
Yeah, West Wing, right?
Charlie Sheen ends up coming out and also going on Alex Jones and doing a 15-minute video to Obama called Dear Mr. President. And pretty much it's all about 9/11 and how that should be reinvestigated. And very quickly afterward, Charlie Sheen loses his he's the highest paid actor in Hollywood at the time that he does this. He has the biggest TV show on air. Everybody loves Charlie Sheen again. He had officially done his Iron Man comeback. And then he does this, and then the spiral unravels, and he becomes a 9/11 truther, and then he gets tiger blood and AIDS, and everything goes crazy. But it was all...
It did, right? It did start with him being a truther, and then everything unraveled from there.
Yeah.
So
Denise
we've got
truther. If you hear her talk, Denise is a truther. Some of the stuff that she says in the show is like, oh shit. And she doesn't play. There's like hierarchies of the Hollywood game that she doesn't play with. And then they ended up showing her on this last season, but when they show her, she's wasted. And so it's just, she's an interesting one. They have a lesbian thing. Brandy Glanville is a different Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That there's like rumors that her and Brandy hooked up for a while. Brandy Glanville lost her husband, Eddie Cibrian, to Leanne Rimes, the girl that sang Blue when she was a child. But he was also on Baywatch, and he was also a soap star. Yeah, he's probably still acting now. But I thought Lisa Rinna and the Charlie Sheen attachment is like one of the weird Real Housewives that's almost like a Russian doll conspiracy inside a conspiracy. Lisa Rinna, she was, did all the Aaron Spelling shows, which I think Aaron Spelling could be looked into and how much he pushed our zeitgeist in general. But she also is Days of Our Lives, Billy. if you're a soap star
Oh, I
fan.
totally am.
But she was the original Billy on Days of Our Lives. And then she wasn't probably one of the longer running cast members, but she got into a fight with little Kathy, and little Kathy threw that Hilton weight around with the Bravo network, I think, and Lisa Rinna's days were numbered.
Oh, so is Lisa Rinna not on Housewives anymore?
She is not on Housewives anymore. But
Wasn't she on Jersey Housewives? Or was that another person that had a tiny forehead?
Or same exact face. Yeah, it's not her though, but her daughters are also models. Like a lot of these Real Housewives, we didn't even go into their children, and they're all their husbands. But her husband, it's like a lot of them, all their kids are also pushers of pop culture. Garcelle's one of my homegirls. I like her. She's a Haitian. She dated Eddie Murphy. She was like the pretty girl of the 90s. If there was a black movie that came out, she was like Coming to America. All of those things, but she's awesome. She kind of says it how it is. Something about her feels clean. It doesn't feel like she's mixed up in the things. But
you got to have a connection to Haiti though, always, especially if you're doing human trafficking.
And before we were coming on, I was looking up, she's also a model. So it's like once you make it through a certain amount of thing, look at your Ford agency, which that's when we were IMG, we were just looking up. She is her husband's, I started to look up, and I'm like, oh, interesting. But that was right before we did the show. Because the character they want you to see on TV. Look at Aaron Spelling again.
Right, yeah, another connection to Aaron Spelling here. So it really is kind of this small little community of people that know each other through all sorts of existing ways.
The biggest house in Beverly Hills. That's a weird fact I remember from living out in California. And his daughter's Tori Spelling. And I think right now she lives in a trailer on the property. I might be wrong.
By choice, I assume.
Yeah, but 90210, all those shows, Aaron Spelling, like there's some part of him that he probably one of your favorite shows of your childhood, Aaron Spelling was involved with. And then the weird part is, if you ask your mom or something you remember that your mom's favorite show of her childhood, it will be an Aaron Spelling show too.
This is so weird. Yeah. So Aaron Spelling, it says Charlie's Angels, Love Boat, Heart to Heart, Dynasty, Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, Seventh Heaven, Charmed, Mod Squad, Rookies, Sunset Beach. His last name was actually Sparrow, but they changed it when they immigrated to the U.S. This was an interesting note too, that it said that when he was a child, he lost it says at the age of 8, Spelling psychosomatically lost the use of both legs due to trauma caused by anti-Semitic bullying from schoolmates. He was confined to bed for a year and later made a full recovery. He got bullied so hard that his legs stopped working. I've never even heard of that before.
He got Jewish bullied so hard because he convinced himself he couldn't walk. That is a weird way to try to explain away something. And Hollywood is a spell. Yeah, it's crazy.
He was in Dragnet, I Love Lucy, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Gunsmoke. So absolutely a sort of like a staple in Hollywood, I guess, growing up.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. And that's
Bing Crosby's former LA mansion called the Manor. So the mansion that you're talking about, 123 room home with over 56,000 square feet of floor space. So yeah, we're talking slightly bigger than my house or your house.
Petra Ecclestone ultimately purchased the property for $80. Petra Ecclestone, that is a witch name. Look at a model, a fashion designer, a socialite, all the things we keep talking about. Even even Mar-a-Lago was built by a woman. Like she had it built. Like there is something when there's like the palaces that we'd create, the mind palaces, there's something about I believe that there's mages in Hollywood. And I think in that vampiric way, they're doing rituals that we don't understand to maybe become the dictators of culture throughout I don't know. I'm sure there's a god on Olympus that they're like, and your superpower is this. I don't know. They're probably not called superpowers, but you know what I mean.
This is interesting, though, of taking this form of research of like, I don't care who the business partner was, who was the wife, and then following that. Okay, now who was the wife's mom and who was her dad, and following this other. I guess anyone that does any sort of genealogy research would probably be used to this. You usually get the most useful connections between where someone sits in these big bloodlines. You get it through the mom. So it would make sense that you would follow the housewives in order to really discover where the power comes from in any particular dynasty or family. Because it's one thing to be rich, to like get a whole bunch of money. I would almost pose that same thing you were asking. Would, like, if you could be rich and famous, wouldn't you want to just get rid of the fame part? Well, now it's like, if you can be rich and powerful, like, who cares about the rich part? Like, once you get into the power aspect of all this. So the guys making money might only be half of the equation. It might be less of, they make so much that they can afford to just have their wives go off and do anything. It's like, no. The only reason that she's even the wife is so that they have these riches, this physical resources to tap into, to then flex the power that's already in these family lines.
Well, even look at Nancy Pelosi. She is essentially just this.
Pelosi. Absolutely. You don't have to ask me twice.
Yeah, like she's essentially exactly this. And I just, even there's rumors of Melania Trump and that she is a Romanov and that the family disappeared and that she is the offspring of the family. Look at those sandbags. She could save New Orleans from being flooded.
God bless.
Nancy Pelosi jugging around.
Hasn't there been a like Washington D.C. Housewives show?
Yes, there is all of but I just, even something about Queen Elizabeth, something about Prince Charles was when he was never supposed to be the king anyway. It was supposed to go directly to William, and somewhere in the timeline it got all mixed up, but all of a sudden Charles gets it and it gets split into Camilla, and Camilla is never supposed to ever be a queen. And so there's something about that, even this, it feels like in a super spy way, everybody wants to look into JFK, but nobody looks into Jackie O. And Jackie O's sister is with Onassis on the planet for years and years and years and years. They're like lovers. They go all over the world. Essentially, Onassis is the most powerful man in the whole entire world.
He's literally a James Bond villain. He influenced, I can't remember which one, it might have been Octopussy, but he was the villain archetype in one of the James Bond movies, all the way down to like owning the islands in Greece.
Yeah, it's like he the only thing that you could kind of even come close to equating in a couple years would be Robert Maxwell, with how huge Onassis was. He was the only man on the entire planet that has his own private security force. And so her sister is lovers with this guy. And then the second that JFK gets killed, she stands there with the blood on her. Why LBJ is getting sworn in. This cold bitch doesn't give a shit. I mean, she cares. Like, there's something else. She's showing the enemy. She doesn't give a shit. There's like a cold bitch move here. The second RFK gets killed by Sirhan, MK Ultra. But the second that happens, she calls her sister immediately and she's like, they want to kill us all. And then she ends up marrying Onassis. and being on the yacht with her sister and her sister's lover. Like something else is there. So if you're the most powerful man in the world and you have your own private security force, you probably have your own private Red Sparrows and you're playing a different game that has nothing to do with a country or king or president. And so, you and I talk about the Howard Hugheses of the world, and now we can, talk about the Elon Musk. You don't need a country. It's such a different game when you're playing at these levels of power that these people are. And then if you're actually innovative or something too, but you don't even know how much of the history is stolen and who's innovative and who's a Elon venture capitalist.
And speaking of the Red Sparrow, again, spelling was Sparrow. That was the original name for the Sparrows.
And he was a Russian.
Right.
He was a Russian Jew. And the Red Sparrow whole squad idea of female super spies was created by the Russians. So I don't know. I think if you could have a Navy SEAL looking dude, or if you could have a 5'4" trained in martial arts, knows how to use every gun and speaks 9 languages, she's going to get so much further than him. Like, not in the way of warfare and not in the way of like, I'm going to crawl in from the swamp and climb up the castle wall and just mix into the party, but in that way too. A woman in a pretty dress is going to mix in so much easier than any dude in that looks like James Bond. I almost even feel like that trope of the super spy was given to us over and over again by MI6 being James Bond or by Jason Bourne and never the female, because it always really was the female. If you worked in ways of poison or heart attack guns, you don't need strength. You need black cat energy. It's
right.
Like,
you need someone that can get invited nearly anywhere, and James Bond's not getting invited anywhere, or Maxwell Smart, but Six would get invited to all the parties when Maxwell couldn't.
Or do you think even like the Huma Abedin of it all, marrying Soros, those are dealings of different kind. I don't like the word royalty, but it's different kind of power structures than we understand. That it's like they almost show us, look at this queen and this prince and princess are getting married. That's the bullshit. The real power structure
the Abedin and the Soros connection, it almost feels like the new version of dowry is just blackmail. Like who has the most expensive blackmail, and that's the true dowry. It's got nothing to do with how many horses you can afford to give their parents anymore. Now it's a whole different level.
Like, can you hold it over a certain family for a certain amount of time?
Right. Or how well did you keep yourself together when you were in the middle of one of these huge fallouts? Like I don't know how many Wiener got involved in, how many times he got stuck with his Wiener out, but it was like 3 or 4 times. And she was able to maintain throughout all of that, even as a close aide of Hillary Clinton. I mean, I would love to know like an actual Housewives of the Potomac, not just the movers and shakers now, but like I want the version where Hillary Clinton is getting messy and yelling at cats.
I feel like that the closest version to that is House of Cards.
Right.
I think the closest version to really of the levels that shit is going on. But I think Huma Abedin has an attachment to the Muslim Brotherhood and what's that? Minnesota, Elon Omar. I might be wrong, or it's the House of Saud. I don't remember, but it's like somewhere in the file, Huma Abedin has her own weird rich family. Like the Abedins are their own mega multi-million family. And it's almost like the real curious one of it is the Wiener. He doesn't make sense. Like the Wiener was never really going to be the long haul. If you ever watched Anthony Weiner though, the one thing I'll give the guy credit, if you ever watched him on the floor make an argument, you would be like, fuck, that's how I want every politician to be. Like, dude, it'll, even if you're just watching it for the theater, you'll be like, it doesn't even matter what the argument is, because that's, whatever. Agree, disagree, whatever. It's just the way he's making it, his actor of what he's up to when he has the mic, you're like, bravo. I see. Okay. Like, so
I feel like maybe that's in the cards is a wiener deep dive.
it should be. Yeah. Because I mean, it ends with 9 NYPD killing themselves.
Okay, well, that's next up on the road for 2025 for sure. We'll probably do a few more show, at least a couple more on Housewives because
I have the last Real Housewife that I want to give you.
Who is
the last one I want to
housewife?
give you today. And I felt like it should end with this because it's the newest housewife, but you actually brought up something that attaches to Back to the Future anyway, because you said Twin Peaks, which also is like Pines Mall in a weird way. It's like almost the same symbolism. So the newest housewife, and this is a fucking play, is Jennifer Tilly. And you might, Joe, know Jennifer Tilly and Meg Tilly. They were both actresses for like B movies. They're just two sisters, two random sister witches like the Arquettes. And she ends up getting married to the creator of a little cartoon. And when they get a divorce, she could have taken money, but instead she was like, I'll just take a percentage of that cartoon. And that cartoon's The Simpsons. So Jennifer is this eccentric, who knows how much she's worth person that is an owner of the show that we would say has the Masonic script that we're all living on right now that's predicting the future. So I think that is like the curious new addition to the Real Housewives. And she's best friends with Sutton Stratt, who is the Southern belle that all the fashion people love. And so I thought that was super interesting. And she's a voice on the Family Guy.
Right. It's interesting too, because I wonder if having that level of money somehow do you get to skip the new money hazing? Because it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I've got new money, but I've got so much of this new money, it might as well be old money.
Or you and your sister have made it through the things, because look at her very first award. She is a recipient of the Saturn Award. So I just feel like, oh, isn't that crazy? Saturn is the god of what? Time. What is the Simpsons doing? Oh, time travel. It's like always telling us like it's predicting this fucking thing and doing this thing, but really it's just they got the script. And she's been in some crazy parts. Like she's one of those actresses that you're like, for her and her sister, you're like, oh my gosh, they're in that. Oh my gosh, she's in that.
Yeah, I mean, Bound, classic movie, of course, for the same reason that someone might like Wild Things. You'd probably also really like Bound.
Yeah. Gina Gershon.
And Liar, Liar. Those are the two big ones, I think. Bound and Liar, Liar. And then Bride of Chucky ends up being in there.
Yeah, so I just think it's crazy that kind of part of like she's just a little chess piece like that and a proper divorce, and she ends up with a part of that show.
So this is just getting started. Like the Housewives trajectory is just now getting started, because we're starting to introduce new characters that you might recognize outside of these small little families.
Yeah, and it's weird how they make a mix of a little bit of Hollywood, a little bit of politics, a little bit of, you have to look up, who is this person? Why are they this? And then looking that up is almost an advertisement of its own. Because now if you look in Vegas, some of the most expensive brand new restaurants are all Lisa Vanderpump restaurants. So it's just like something seems to be about Vegas and how these people play. And it all just seems like chess pieces. Because I would even wonder, is Lisa's restaurant in a competing hotel as that other housewife? Or are all the hotels just kind of owned by the same people? It's
right,
just
the illusion of choice.
Yeah. So I don't know. Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is, but I just think Follow the Wives in general. I think it's, if you would have been watching Bill Clinton in the 90s and only paid attention to Hillary, what more could you have figured out?
Right. That's actually a really good case. How much more would we understand about the JFK assassination if people had put as much effort into the Jackie connection versus any other connection.
Yeah, or even certain like you have like Joe Biden and his wife ends up dying, and then Jill, who is Jill? Who is Jill?
Who
She's
is
not a
Jill?
real
That almost
doctor.
feels like it. That also deserves a deep dive. Maybe Wiener and Jill.
I know. So it's just like, who really is Melania? Where does she come from in all of this? Or,
Ooh, that's another good one.
you know, Ivanka Trump, who is she to the Kushners? So that feels like some kind of play that you get to marry the daughter of the king. Who are you? You must have some properties of your own. Oh, look at the Kushners bought the 666 building. They changed it to the 606 building. That is interesting magical plays to me. So I don't know. I look at everything that somebody accused me last night because they were like, what do you think about the Super Bowl? And I said, I don't know if I'm really even paying attention to the Molochian ritual yet. I don't even know who's involved. And they were like, Chaney, did you eat paint chips when you were a kid? And I was like, that's a conspiracy. But I will talk to you about lead paint another day.
It's actually good for you.
Yeah. So I'm like, maybe you didn't eat enough. But really, my comeback was, maybe, but I know I never wore a mask during COVID.
What if it was a lead mask?
Yeah, I did do that. I have like a knight's helmet, but that's just for magic protection.
Well, what else do we have to look forward to from Chaney in 2025?
I don't know. I need to start doing my show again. I need to start my own rant session. I'm excited about the shows that I'm kind of helping put out. I'm helping My Maria 777 to do the Lunatic Fringe, and I'm working with the Club Maha boys to help them get that done. But I'm excited for Secret Society of Good Guys Wednesday night and for the comic book we're going to do.
That's right. Well, yeah, we'll dance that a little bit. Me and Chaney working on a comic book called The Vril Housewives, and it's sort of what we've been talking about here, but taken to the next level. We'll do another video on that one coming up shortly. So keep your ear to the ground on that. But tune into Secret Society. We're going to be doing primetime on Wednesdays. We also do it currently at midnight on Fridays. And we always have some rotating guests on that show. It's always a lot of fun. It's usually like 3 to 4 hours. Again, at midnight, we end up going to bed at like 5 a.m. in the morning, but it's got the kind of vibes that I think you need. Like you get into interesting conversations right around that 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. mark in the middle of the night. So, and if it were done at any other time, I don't think it would have the same energy. So I love that show for that reason.
It's like we're going to talk about everything that happened in the week, but we might end up in a total wormhole. And I kind of love that. It's reminds me of if we were all to sit in like a college smoking circle and just get so
That's what it feels like. Absolutely.
And we're like, have you ever wondered what it's like to be a cloud?
It really does. It has that feel of like all of the responsible people that have things to do the rest of the day. Like they've already gone home, they're in bed, they're sleeping, and like we're still up passing around the peace pipe. And it's like we should have gone to bed hours ago, but here we are. We're talking about, what clouds are made of and whether or not, JFK Jr. is coming back or not.
I will tell you though, if I have half the audience wakes up, they're like in their real lives or with their kids or with their whatever, and they listen with their coffee and they say it's the best way to start their weekend because they're like dying laughing, and then they have like 10 thought-provoking questions or rabbit holes or something that they're like wondering for the whole week, and then they have synchronistic stuff that happens that they're like, oh my gosh, you guys were just talking about this. It's almost like a time capsule of magic.
Well, if you like this interview, come join us, hang out either on Friday nights live at midnight or download it the morning after, listen to it with your kids and the whole family over breakfast. Is the best thing you could ever do for your entire family.
Not with your kid unless they're used to the F word.
And if you think that it would be cool to see like a Vril Housewives project or any of the other Paranoid American projects and comics, make sure you go to the Patreon, you join the Patreon in the next few weeks here, because I'm going to be changing things up there a little bit. We're going to be sending some cool stuff out lots of exclusives, but I need you to just at least be a member. Go and join for free even, and you'll get something cool. But yeah.
And I'll tell you this, if you are a dude and you've been listening to conspiracy for however long, and maybe your girl humors you, but she doesn't ever really get down, and you try to talk to her about something and her face glazes over, this is the shit to get her into the shit about. Like, I'm telling you, if she listens to this, she'll look at you and be like, yeah, that's true. She'll start adding on and be like, she's wrong about that. She actually was with this. She'll start adding on, but it will give her the filter to start looking at her Andy Cohen shows, who's best friends with Anderson Vanderbilt, but we'll talk about that another show. But I think it's so important that women realize how much of this stuff that the guys are talking about from Manly P. Hall, Aleister Crowley, all that, but it's happening on their shows. And guys notice it at the halftime of their football or the halftime of their thing, but really it's happening all the time. And these girls' clothing and their makeup and what they're selling and what they're driving. And so I feel like this is the shit to get your girl into conspiracies. And then
best pitch ever. Yeah. Secret Society of Good Guys is the best way to get your chick, your wife, your sister, your girlfriend, anyone into conspiracy theories. Because it's like a foot in the door. And then once they listen to 1 or 2 episodes, you already got them. Like now they're going to talk about 9/11 and Q and Isaac Happy with you without even having to skip a beat. So yeah, best way to introduce someone that you can't just shoehorn them into listening to like Last Podcast on the Left or Tinfoil Hat. You're going to have to get them through Secret Society of Good Guys the only way.
Yeah, and I think Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Start there. Ask your girl, have you ever watched Vanderpump, Below Deck, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, any show on Bravo? This is going to be the episode that you're like, babe, will you please just listen to this episode of Paranoid American? Will you please? It's all about the Real Housewives. Then I'm telling you. And then you're going to write Thomas and be like, my girl listened, she liked it, and she's totally going to let me join your Patreon now.
Dude, I'm so on for below deck breakdown. Especially we could do like a maritime law sort of connection and get some Jordan Maxwell in there. So anyone tuning in that just wants to hear like the hot, messy gossip on Below Deck is going to get an earful of Jordan Maxwell maritime law lectures. I think that's actually something top of my list now.
I kind of love this idea of how you have Occult Disney. There's a whole different one called like Bravo, but the A is the all-seeing eye.
Yes.
And then we just break down all these shows that like goes along with, because
that, and then we're going to do Lifetime movies. The Spellings, again, you see Tori Spelling pop up in all of these weird Lifetime movies in the early and mid 90s. So there's direct connections here all over the place.
I can't wait. I'm in. I think this is Hollywood, like politics. Now that thing, it's like that movie. It's kind of running. That's what it's doing. Now we have to turn, like the way the pendulum swings again is back to Hollywood.
All right. Thank you, Chaney, for chilling with me. As always, you're my roll dog. I'll see you on Friday.
Paranoid. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlight your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out. Nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal. You're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal. You're welcome. Yet they doing it still. You're welcome.